Good morning, everybody, and happy weekend. I got a good little consultation question for you, and I'm going shirtless for this one because your boy hit pull muscles, and that is somewhat germane to today's topic. It is Aloha Bull. I have a question. Have you done any videos about training auxiliary muscles? And I looked through my archives, and the answer is no, I hadn't. And I never really thought it necessary to actually do so. However, it does raise a pretty good question. What are auxiliary muscles and how do we train them? Auxiliary muscles in general are muscles that you use sort of in a complementary fashion with your larger, more primary muscles. For instance, if you are doing pull-ups, right? You're primarily training your lats, right? You're pulling your body up, but you're also working your bicep and your forearm. So in that answer or in that example, I would say your biceps are more complementary muscles, your forearms are a bit more auxiliary in that sense. Or if you're shrugging, right, your forearms to get the grip, that is an auxiliary muscle you are training, right? You're not doing shrugs to train grip strength, not primarily. You're trying to train your traps, right? But you will train your grip strength by doing shrugs. So that's what I would define as the definition of an auxiliary muscle. In general, my rule of thumb is don't train auxiliary muscles individually as much. This is because you are more effectively going to train them through your primary workouts, right? We talk about the big six on this channel all the time: bench, squat, deadlift, rows, pull ups, press. You do those six, almost every auxiliary muscle is going to get trained by those, with a few exceptions. Calves, um, neck muscles, I guess, forearms to a degree, although bent over rows and pull-ups, you'll get your forearms to a pretty good extent, especially if you're doing weighted pull-ups. Oh my God. But auxiliary muscles in general, what you can do is if you do want to train them, I would say certainly do not spend an entire gym day just working on them, just working on sort of those edge case muscles. Those are ones you can kind of throw in closer to the end of a given workout and pair them up, right? So if you are looking to train a particular, let's take pulls for example, because I did that today. Let's say you want to train forearms, right? Well, you can do dumbbell wrist curls in the gym to train your forearms. You can do them pronated or supinated. Both will work those brachioradialis muscles quite well. You can do reverse curls to hit them with your biceps. You can do hammer curls as well for the same function. As an example, that would be as an auxiliary to your bent over rows or your pull-ups. So that's a pretty good basic idea. Another one for forearms is rice bucket training, which is where you take a big old bucket of rice, such as this one, and you grip it, you run your hands through it. My hands are dirty right now, so I'm not going to do that, but you get the idea. Uh, so rice bucket training is a pretty good one in general. But for auxiliary muscles, I wouldn't worry too much specifically about any one. Like maybe on leg day, you throw in the adductors and abductors if you're looking to train those. I hurt an abductor a while back, so I've been kind of working on that. Actually, I think it was an adductor. It's the ones that you feel when you're closing your legs. So yeah, I think that's an adductor. So I focused on that, used the individual machine for that, but those are more niche cases. I would not recommend spending too much time on auxiliaries. Again, most of them you're going to handle through your day-to-day workouts. Now, some exceptions. If you play a sport or have a hobby that requires the use of a lot of auxiliary muscles, for instance, if you're a rock climber, well, you're going to really want grip strength there. So maybe catering your workout with things like farmer's walks, bent over rows, but also shrugs, um, maybe different types of pull-ups with different grips on them, a lot of wrist curls, rice bucket training to really beef up your forearms and your grip strength makes a lot more sense. Serratus muscle, right? If you are a boxer or you do any combat sport that involves punching, you really want that muscle trained because that's where a lot of the firepower comes when you punch, as an example. So overhead pulls are pretty, like pullovers are pretty good for that. As an example, the Raider chest pull isn't a bad one either. I pair those up with my legs to really try and expand my rib cage. Makes my chest look bigger, but you don't have to do it on a leg day. You can throw it in where you see fit. That's kind of the nice thing about a lot of the auxiliary muscles is you can make them work on any given day. I personally would say pair them with the exercises that make sense, right? If you're trying to get forearms a little bit more, pair it with your pull day. If you're trying to get calves a little bit more, pair it with your leg day, things of that nature, right? Uh, in general, though, I wouldn't worry too much about auxiliary muscles. It's the person who asked me this, you're not a competitive bodybuilder, so you don't really need to worry about the aesthetics of it. And for day-to-day functional fitness, it doesn't it's not very common that you're going to be working those auxiliary muscles in such a fashion where you wouldn't be using some other muscle to more accurately simulate that in the gym. So in general, I would say it's not really worth your time to focus that hard on auxiliary muscles. You know, the biggest one for me is grip strength and forearms. As for what is routinely an auxiliary muscle, but you do a good solid pull workout or you hit enough back and biceps exercises, your forearms should be feeling it by the end. And if they're not, you can always throw in wrist curls or rice bucket training. Uh, if you really want to I think you're better off focusing on the big ones. If you really want to target a specific chunk of the big muscle, for instance, you want to work on your upper chest a bit, well, then you do incline press. If you want to work on your hamstrings a bit more, then you do Romanian deadlifts as opposed to conventional. Or you do really, really deep set squats with a low bar or good mornings as opposed to, high bar, maybe squats with wedge or a plate below your feet. Really, there's no bad squat, but actually I did see a bad squat today. Guy wasn't even hitting 90 degrees. Now, I'm not a form fascist, but bro, you got to at least be hitting 90 degrees. You were going down like 6 inches from a stand. And you were doing it with 5 plates too, which tells me you were ego lifting. And you were doing that without a belt, which just ugh, no, bro. That ain't it. Anyway, I don't like to criticize others, but I saw that. It was bad enough to the point where I'm like, that there's nothing I can say here that he probably hasn't already heard from someone else. He's gonna have to learn the hard way. Some people do. But that's really all I had for auxiliary muscles. There's just not that much meat on the bone, so to speak here. In general, unless you've got a specific sport or task you need to work a given auxiliary muscle for, the big six should cover almost all of them. And if they don't, throw in a couple sets at the end of a given workout and you should be good to go. That's all I have for this video. Pretty cut and dried. If you have any questions, as always, go to askbullmuscle@gmail.com where you can ask me, a soon to be retired, financially independent nuclear engineer runway model, which by the way, I had a show not too long ago in Kauai of all places. Kind of fun. Any question you like can be about personal finance, fitness, diet, the works. That's all I got for you for now. Might do another video, time depending. As always, make good decisions. Those good decisions form your actions. Those actions form your habits. Those habits form your values. Those values form an ethos. Be the guy to start the roux. The rough waters of life. Much love. Come in for the hug. Shoots.